one is no good. Rebounded by Anthony. 2 seconds left. Anthony for the win. Cody rolls it. Cole Anthony gives the Magic a victory.
Close Up Magic.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Close Up Magic. I'm your host, Stephen Cameron, and today we got a really fun episode planned for you all. This is Monday, July 3rd. Free agency has been going on for a few days now. The Magic have basically wrapped up what their team is looking like going into the year, and we signed the Orlando Magic signed the first Australian player to the team, right? Now, granted, this Joe Ingles has been in the league for a long time, but he's the first Australian player that has played. It's going to play in a regular season for the Orlando Magic. There's been some close guys in the past, but in honor of that, I've brought on my good friend Luke Smith, who you all have heard on the show many times. He is from Australia. He spent some time in Toronto for many years. He is extremely integrated into the basketball world in Australia as a coach and in a couple of different leagues, giving back to the community. So he's very knowledgeable and a diehard Magic fan. So if you don't know him, that's a little bit about him. But for those of you that are familiar with him, he's back. So we're going to have a lot of fun. Before we bring Luke on stage, we got a couple of things we got to do. The housekeeping normal stuff. If you want to support this show financially, there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can do it by buying a piece of merch. There's links in the description if you'd like to get some show merch. You can also become a Patreon. We have 3 different tiers of Patreon, starting at $3 at our lowest tier. Gets you into like Discords. We do giveaways. We just did a Zoom video call with all of our patrons just a few weeks ago before the draft. That was a lot of fun. We'll probably do another one later this month. So there's some cool benefits, just a way to support us. We give all that money back to you guys. We do that by buying new equipment. We're going to be looking at buying some new lights and some gear to help support more in-game content. And then we also do giveaways. We just gave a jersey to end last season. We're giving away a hat today. We'll have another giveaway to come up to welcome in the new season coming up in a few weeks or a few months. And if you're a Patreon, you get double entry into all of that. So it's worth it. So the other way you can support the podcast is by liking and subscribing to the show on any platform that you're watching. Leave a comment, leave a review. We love all that stuff. It really helps us out. All right, before we bring on Luke, like I did mention, we do have a giveaway that we ran a few weeks ago. All you had to do was, one, either be a Patreon member where you get double entry regardless. So we have a handful of Patreon members that I got double entries into this. Or in the comment on Twitter, you had to comment before the draft started who you think was going to get drafted into the Orlando Magic. We had a lot of Grady Dick people out there. So a lot of you that put Grady Dick, you did not get entered into this. There was a handful of you that put Anthony Black, and there were 0 of you that put Jet Howard. So we're going to do this. Give me a second to get my screen ready. All right. I should have done this beforehand, but I'm going to share my screen. 1 second. All right. So you all can see this duck race. I put all of your Twitter names or Patreon names in here, and we're going to hit start, and let's see what happens. Continue. Okay, hold on. You know what? This is really failing hard. Oh, start. I hit the wrong thing. Thank you for your patience, everyone. All right, let's see what duck is going to win this. Looks like Yachty's up. We got HQ. We got Courtside NFT. Dude, that's my homie. All right, Andrew. Sorry, Tony, Anthony. I will hit you up shortly. I'm just going to text you since I know you, and we'll get you a hat sent out to you right away. Cool. All right, everyone. Appreciate you all for participating in that. Again, we will do more. We'll do more giveaways soon. But until then, we're going to bring up Luke. We're going to talk some Magic basketball. We're going to have some fun. Luke, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing well. Can't complain. Just gave away a hat to a fan of the show. So I really cannot complain. I love being able to do giveaways.
We're both wearing Magic hats right now. Someone else is going to have a Magic hat.
Dude, actually, I don't typically like the draft hats that they come out. They're typically just too much going on. But this year's draft hat's pretty dope. It's very clean looking. I actually enjoyed it a lot.
I'm really glad we got another like psycho hair dude who had to wear like the hat like right on top of their massive hair. Every draft there's always like one kid, and I always love that. It's sick.
We've had a few over the years. We
Alfred Payton and stuff.
Bombas was kind of funky when he first got drafted too.
No, we didn't draft Alfred Payton, did we? No, who drafted him?
No, the 76ers drafted Payton.
Sixers drafted him, so he wouldn't have worn our hat. Yeah, okay.
No. That's the dumbest thing too. And like they get traded and like they haven't even like they still make them take the photos of the original team that drafted them, even though they got traded. It's like
I hate it, dude. It's so simple. Dumb. It's such a simple change, but yeah, it's stupid.
Yeah, it's very dumb. Dude, so we just got done with free agency for the most part. I mean, the Magic are done unless we get involved in some like third, fourth team in a James Harden, Dame Lillard type of trade situation, which I don't expect, but I guess is possible still. But for the most part, like the Magic have 16 players signed to the roster. They're going to have to eventually trim one down to get to 15 man. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I want to get straight to the celebration right now, Luke. This is a celebration for you, celebration for Australia, celebration for the Magic team. We signed Joe Ingles. Now, yes, we didn't sign some huge, massive name like Brooke Lopez, like Fred VanVleet, like a lot of people were wanting. We didn't make some big splashy trade, but Joe Ingles, I am pretty psyched on this trade, and I know you are for many reasons. Let's start with Australia. What does this mean for an Australian fan and the country of Australia and the Orlando Magic?
Man, look, perhaps it's different for me. You might meet an Australian Magic fan who maybe just, I don't know, doesn't value that kind of inclusion into the team as much as I do. But like for me, I'll get like the emotional side out of it first. Like I've followed this team since I was 7 years old. I've been on this show a lot, so I think some people might recall. Like that's been, varying levels. In high school, a little bit of disengagement, and then coming back into it in my late teens, but then being quite obsessed when I was younger. But the Orlando Magic have always been my team and had like some sort of real estate in my head for a long, long time. And another thing that has also shared a lot of real estate for me, and it's become even more powerful as I've gotten into coaching and being in the basketball community here and kind of understanding the varied pathways that Australian kids have to get to the NBA and that the added challenges of doing it from this corner of the world. Australian basketball in itself is one that I care about a lot too. So I really do put those guys on a pedestal. I think they represent something that's really good for kids back here. They're great role models, Joe, Patty, Jock Landale, Josh Giddey, guys like that. Aaron Baines, Matthew Dellavedova, Dante Exum, Thon Maker, like all those guys set a really great, fantastic example. And I guess my two worlds being combined in a way finally is, and I some people might think this is lame. It was like quite emotional for me to like actually be like, fuck yeah, we have an Australian dude who's from like a spot that I know. I know that like I know what he would have played like elite youth as a kid. I know how much Australian basketball means to him. Joe and Patty are kind of the epitome of that. Like you look when we won the bronze medal, man, like the most famous photo of it is the photo of Joe and Patty hugging, and the basketball is in the back with the Olympic rings, and it was like they finally did it, like these two best friends. So for me, it's just like a sick little combination of my worlds. Like to have a dude from my country finally wearing our uniform is so sick. And Australian basketball's profile has obviously increased a lot. Kind of a slow burn since Bogut. Before that, it was a very trickled in kind of thing. But, with Longley kind of being the only real prominent guy who had a bit of a stay in the NBA. But it's just, it's my two worlds combined. It's something that I'm really excited about. And not only is it just any guy, it's like the guy from Australia who's like a smart ass and he's funny and he's a great culture guy and he's going to really, like I predict him and Cole Anthony will be the two dudes who have a little thing with each other. They'll become really good friends. He's just great locker room dude, and that's an added bonus to it. So I think that's the like emotional side of it.
I gotta pause there for a second before you carry on, because like people don't realize. I mean, we might have mentioned this on the pod at one point, but like you would get emotional in a positive way, just like a couple of years ago when we had Humphreys on our like training camp roster, and some some fans that don't follow it as deeply as others might not know. There was this gentleman named Chris Humphreys that made our summer league roster.
Training camp. You're thinking of Chris Humphreys, the dude who was married to Kardashians.
Yeah, I am. You're right. Humphreys. He was like a center or power forward that was on our team. Didn't make it. Didn't even make our G League team. But
he did. He played the season for our G League team. He played preseason. Yeah, he got injured though, and he was like the closest we've had. Like I was like, okay, Isaac Humphreys might get maybe some minutes behind Vooch if Mo Bamba goes down, but it wasn't to be. Kendall Stevens was an Australian-born kid to an American dad. He played a couple of summer leagues with us, and Delhi was almost going to play summer league for Orlando, but I think he ended up going with Cleveland. And obviously, we saw how that worked out for him. Obviously, very good for his career.
Right.
But yeah, this is it. This is the first time an Australian dude is going to walk on a court and be wearing a Magic uniform.
Pretty nice, man. I'm excited about that.
That's great.
I'm excited for you. I'm excited for just like, I mean, you're my homie. I'm excited that it makes you happy, and that makes me happy. And also, I really like Joe Ingles. Like, go up. I don't want to steal the thunder of you introducing how he's going to affect the team on the court. I'll respond. So why don't you transition to that next phase?
So Joe Ingles, man, is so a little thing is that I actually watched Joe Ingles play in his rookie year in 2006 or 2007. He played 2 or 3 years in the Australian League. Won like Rookie of the Year. I think he holds the record for most points on a debut. I think it was like 29 or 28. And he played for a team that's now defunct. They're gone, called the Southern Dragons. And I watched him play, and it didn't mean anything in the moment then. I kind of was a little checked out on Australian basketball, but just had some tickets. But I obviously still knew some of the players. But I remember being like, oh, this is this kid that people are talking about. He's gone off and he's had an incredible career in Europe. But it wasn't really until the 2008 Olympics that I kind of like watched him play again properly. And he was a lot more athletic then, played a little bit of a different game. But what Joe has always been, and especially in the realm of the Australian national team, is a super high IQ secondary playmaker. You watched him. He's played minutes at the one. He did it with Milwaukee. He did it with Utah. And oftentimes in the Australian setting where there's a lot of off-ball movement with guys like Patty Mills, Chris Goulding and stuff like that, he would come in and play that point guard role. You know what I mean? Quite slow and quite decisive when he came around pick and rolls or would try and get his feet into his paint to find those movement shooters. I have felt like the mainstream NBA media, where you can always kind of catch him out, be like, oh, you don't really watch Orlando much, or you don't really know Joe Ingles' game well enough, because he's often always played against like played with more high-profile dudes. I've seen that people don't get it. And I think what happens, and I was saying this to a friend this morning, is that people mistake young team for fast team. It's not Joe Ingles signing with Memphis, who have Jar and they're like a go, or Joe Ingles playing next to like Philly when they had Ben, kind of playing the point guard. Right. It's Joe Ingles playing in a team that is fairly half court orientated as it is.
Bolts is pretty half courty.
Yeah, we are a half court team, and we got like Franz and Paolo are like secondary playmakers in themselves, and I will touch on the Franz Joe Ingles thing in a moment. But to me, he brings like this kind of guy who can be a second side creator, not with a heap of athleticism, but a guy who's going to help Gary Harris find shots, a guy who's going to help Franz and Paolo find a closeout that they can attack if a guy's helping over. So I think that there's a real benefit to it. I think there's going to be a real veteran savvy that he's going to bring. I think there's going to be a patience he'll be able to bring to the offense in some of the younger lineups. You might see him next to Anthony Black, perhaps next to Jet, perhaps next to Caleb Houston if those guys end up with minutes. But it is something that is really cool. I think it's a great fit, especially just as a shooter. You will remember when we drafted Franz, Joe Ingles was a comp I made. I was like, there's some Joe to his game. There's that like peak Utah Joe definitely in Franz's game. So I think that they're going to really work well off each other. He thrives on playing with fast guys. Smart guys. He really thrives on playing with smart guys. I have watched a substantial amount of Joe Ingles, man, like in different uniforms. I've watched both his NBA stints. I've watched him in the NBL. I've watched him play for the Australian national team many, many times. And he's a smart fucking player. He doesn't back down from anybody. You know, like we've seen him in those playoff battles with Utah. You've seen him go at Paul George. You've seen him go at DeAndre Jordan. You've seen him go at Chris Paul, man. You've seen him go at Jimmy Butler. He doesn't give a fuck. He is like a pretty fucking fearless dude. And I think he's going to be a great influence. And if by the end of the season, his minutes will dwindle down a touch, that's okay. Because if Jet Howard comes in and he's shooting the piss out of it, you know what I mean? And it does kind of look as if, you know, there's space for these young guys and we're not necessarily losing out, then he's going to be a really good kind of presence there 100%. And I think, yeah, like the thing with the Joe Ingles Magic stuff is it's like, I get a little bit arrogant. I get a little bit like, yo, let me do the fucking talking, you know? Like, I don't want to hear all these dipshits on the ringer and stuff kind of have half an opinion. Like, when I know what I'm talking about, you know? And he might be a step slow because of the ACL. It might not look as good as we think defensively, but he will bring positivity to this room and he'll bring something that we need.
Yeah, I mean, I think you laid it up nicely. I'll just add to that a little bit or just continue the conversation where, like, you know, we signed him for 2 years and $22 million. The second year is team controlled. So, like, sure, some people might say this is an overpay, but one, we're a small market. We always have to overpay. Two, you know, like, we are a team with a lot of moving parts right now, and a lot of different things. So, like, having this team controlled second option, and also like, hey man, $11 million is a great, I don't necessarily want to trade him, but like if we need to, it's an awesome salary, like a Gary Harris type of salary to throw into a trade. You know, if we don't want to, if there's opportunity to make a really big move next summer, like we don't have to pick up his option, then we have cap space all over again to a degree, right?
Exactly.
Depending on, you know, what happens with some other players. So it just gives us a lot of flexibility. If all is going well and we want to retain him, it's $11 million. It's not a huge cap hit in compared to how much benefit that he's going to most likely bring to this team.
I'm a realist about it too. Like people like, look, perfect fucking world, dude. We win a championship and Joe Ingles is on the team.
Dude, I told people the other day that I would do a shoey if we made the playoffs because with Joe Ingles on the team, all right? And I know how you feel about shoeys, but I'm going to do one anyways.
Yeah, but like I'm a realist about it, and that like I also looked at the contract and also like, you know, this is flexibility that like, you know, he can come and help for a year, and if our progression is forward and then it doesn't suit next year, then thank you, you know, like that's great. Yeah. But I haven't, like, again, I'm off Twitter completely nowadays, but I haven't seen too much of the negativity around the size of the contract. But like, it's $11 million.
Breaking it down, I think there's people like there was a handful. I think most people were positively reacting. There were a handful that were like, 35-year-old who just came off an ACL getting this much. I'm just like, it's not really a big deal. Like, just calm down. And that's like me getting upset over the Mo Wagner contract, which we'll talk about in a little bit, where it's like, it doesn't really matter. Even if it might be a little over, who cares? It's fine. It's
exactly.
Not
but and like, 2 or 3 times, man, Joe Ingles, 2 or 3 years, Joe Ingles is going to be back playing his last 2 seasons in the NBL, man, just living it up. So
yeah. And he kind of almost like when he left Utah, he wasn't, you know, I think there was a time where maybe it was threatening, where it was like, I'm just going to go back home to Australia or something like that.
Well, he has said before, literally the day his NBA career ends, he's like, I'm on a flight the next day. Like that dude is not like, you know, staying in America for business
something
opportunities. His thing is like, I'm going home. Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm happy with it, man. I think I have listened to some, you know, some of the bigger podcasts, and I sense of like they're working at a bit of a deficit of understanding, but then the Magic fans where I've listened to them talk about it and like read, like I was reading some stuff on Orlando Magic Daily. I listened to the 6-Man show. It's like when you listen to someone who understands what type of basketball Orlando are playing and who Paolo and Franz are, this is a guy who's going to complement them, or at least like Franz is going to learn from this dude, man. Like, Franz is a German kid who grew up in like German academies. Joe Ingles is like a EuroLeague champ. You know what I mean? Like, he's played in like high level basketball in Europe, and that's developed his game and his feel. The Franz one is a big one for me, man. I'm excited about those two spending a bit of time together on the court.
Well, two of our most important players are Franz and Paulo, right? That's obvious. And they play small forward and power forward, right? Franz can play a little bit of the two, but he's mostly a small forward in a lot of people's eyes. What does Joe Ingles play? He plays small forward and power forward. What is Joe Ingles really good at? He's really good at secondary playmaking. He's a really fucking smart passer. And he's a really nice off-ball mover too. And like, those are all things that we want and hope for Paulo and Franz to continue to get better at. We want them to be able to initiate the pick and roll, which Franz already does really well as a secondary ball handler. Paulo, we want him to be able to be a little bit more of a playmaker and a smart passer. Those are other things that he can learn from Joe Ingles on when to make the right pass. And honestly, like, Joe Ingles, maybe he can't defend like he used to. You know, he's getting a little older, just had that injury, but he's a good defender. I'm not going to say he's like an all defensive team defender, but he's a good defender.
He's always tried, man. Like, he's never been fucking, lightning quick. Obviously, we know he's literally the opposite, but he's not
slow-mo Joe.
Yeah, he's not been a fucking handbrake on anyone's defense. And the passing point you make, dude, I remember like last year, just like we would run out these lineups where it says like Fultz, Paulo, Franz, and Wendell. It's like, that's 4 very gifted passers. Wendell is good he's still got some room to improve. But I'm thinking like, you have lineups sometimes, man, of Wendell, Paulo, Ingles, Franz, and Fultz, man. Like, that reminds me of that 2016 Australian team that came fourth, the one that was like, we were leading Team USA at halftime, and I think we only lost by like 5 or 10 points. And I think it was Chris Paul or someone on that team, maybe KD, came out and said like, in their scouting, they were game planning to play Australia in the gold medal game. They said in a team meeting, they were like, Australia's the best team. That team, man, was like one of the most beautiful passing teams I've ever fucking seen when it comes to like feel. Like, you had Bogut, Baines, Joe, Patty, and Delhi starting, dudes who can all fucking zip that thing around. I get vibes like that when I think of Joe, Franz, and Paulo together with Markel, man. Like, I reckon we're going to see some pretty basketball, man. Some pretty fucking basketball.
The thing that I also want to bring up about Joe is, like, he just helps us in so many ways. I've complained for years about wanting the right types of vets and not just vets. And I'll explain what I mean in that in a second. And Joe just kind of like hits every aspect of that, right? But as far as back to like team fit outside of like vet, we always said we wanted more shooting. Well, guess what? We have more shooting now. Joe Ingles last year had one of his most efficient shooting years. Granted, he's playing on Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis creates a ton of gravity. So it might not have that same efficiency this year with the Magic, but he's career roughly around 40% from 3 on like anywhere between like 4 and 6% attempts per game. So it's like we're gonna have some more floor spacing. But I want to get into like the leadership part, like back to how much he wants to thrive into mentorship, like on a one-on-one, like, hey, let's go have a serious conversation, or just like, hey, like how this dude approaches the game. I'm not sure what type of leader is, and that doesn't really matter, because I think the point is going to like come across regardless, because like, dude, I think the Jazz were in the playoffs I don't think he's ever missed a playoffs. Like, I'm not sure if he's ever missed a playoffs. And he's had some deep playoff runs with the Jazz. Milwaukee was not super deep last year, but like he's been in some really high pressure playoff games, and that is something this team does not have a lot of, right? Gary Harris has been in some high level playoff games for sure, with his time in Denver, but now you add someone else on top of that that's even a little bit more older than Gary. Gary Harris is a dope dude. I think he's a father. He's got his shit together a little bit, but he's still like doing his thing, traveling, partying, having a lot of fun. Joe Ingles, like 35, family, like he's on a different level. And I think I think that's just going to bring a nice balance and leadership to it, to the team. Like, whether the leadership, I said, is individual conversations or just watching who he is as a player and how he approaches the game in the locker room and practices and stuff like that. And then like back to the type of vets I've always wanted. I wanted vets that could fucking play, right? Not necessarily ones that are going to like, for a young team, particularly these last couple of years, not necessarily ones that are going to be like, yo, we definitely need this person in the starting lineup, but like someone who could be in the starting lineup, but also someone who's going to be okay coming off the bench and being a second unit player that has experience and can contribute at a good level. And like Joe Ingles checks every single one of those boxes. I don't just want a vet that's going to sit at the end of the bench and be happy collecting DNPs. And so I don't know, man, like, I think that's something this team needs. This team needs a little bit of competitive edge there to like push people to be better. That's like, we saw what having too young of teams did for past like, we see it all the time throughout the league, how too young of teams can fuck up cultures and people's playing like mindsets. And like, we're starting to we addressed that in a nice way with Joe, considering we just added 2 rookies and this team's age gap got super young with that addition. So
I think you make a great point, man, about the type of vets. Like the type of vets is a big thing. I think there's a lot of talk of veterans in the NBA, which often can just translate to someone over 34. Like, but what does that mean? You know what I mean? And like, you're right. Like we see Gary Harris as a vet,
Dude's 28.
and like, yeah, he's 28, but like, yeah, Joe has played he's played high-level playoff games. He's played fucking high-level EuroLeague playoff games, and we know they're a different beast, man. Like, those motherfuckers are throwing batteries at your head, you know what I mean? Like, that stuff's intense. He's played in 3 Olympics where they've made it to the Final Four. He's played in 3 bronze medal games. Like, this dude has been in the shit. He's played basketball, and I think, like, he's got 2 kids, man. He's had challenges with his family, like, he's like, a really great culture leader. Like, obviously Utah will hold a special place in his heart. And I'm sure he would have wanted to have finished his career there. But I've seen him do it in the Australian program, man. Like the last campaign, man, he brought in like young guys like Josh Green, all of those dudes to kind of like, feel welcome and feel a part of it. And I just think like he's going to get along really well with the front office here. And Coach Mose played in Australia, dude. Like, they're going to be talking. So I just think he's going to be great. I think he's going to have a fantastic and positive effect, 100%.
Luke, before we move on from Joe, my question is, are we planning a trip for both of us to be in Orlando this season to watch Joe and the Magic?
Fuck, man. Like, don't even tempt me. I just booked flights
sure
to go to
between Jonathan and Wyatt and I,
December.
we could figure out a place to put you up, have a good time. Like,
oh, look, I'm not stressed about a bed in the States, man. I got enough friends all over the place. I'll be fine.
We can make it happen.
Yeah, I don't know, man. If it's a playoff, if Magic make the playoffs with Joe Ingles in the building, man, fucking, I don't know. We'll see.
Let's talk offline. We'll figure out some time to get a boys trip going, man.
Easy.
All right, so the Magic also had another signing. We wrapped up free agency by bringing back Moritz Wagner. I can never say his name correctly, so people can roast me. Mo Wagner. We signed him for 2 years, $16 million. It hasn't been announced like per John Hollinger or Woj or anything like that. We don't have a Magic insider with Orlando Sentinel or The Athletic right now. And typically teams won't announce the signings until they've actually signed the paperwork. So we haven't seen much from in regards of communications from Orlando, but I believe the second year is going to be a team option or some sort of non-guaranteed, right? Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on bringing back Mo Wagner on a 2-year, $16 million contract after also like we picked up the option? I think we should put the context there. We picked up Goga Batitsa's option for the second year. So our center rotation is Wendell Carter Jr. And then Goga and Mo will battle it out for second string center. So laying that out there, what goes through your head with all that, man?
Goga and Mo, imagine if you could put them together. That'd be a really good player, dude. That's kind of the thing. Like what I found I hadn't watched much Goga when he was with the Pacers at all, really.
He didn't play much. He was in the
he didn't play much, man. Very. And I really liked what I saw. A little bit more of like an old school bruiser with some of his kind of tendencies and skills. And yeah, there was some games where you saw Coach Mose kind of go to it being more of a situational fit as to who was running out there. I'm happy for that to be the case at the start of the next season. Let them kind of battle it out a bit. But also it's like are we at a point where we're trying to let two dudes who are over the age of 25 battle it out? Like, why is that not two young dudes doing that? Why do we not have a solidified backup five? Why are we not rotation focused when we want to be a play-in or a playoff team? I'm just a little bit like, I'm okay. Like, you know, how our backup guard thing last year, or even this year, let's just say Cole, Suggs, Anthony Black. That, okay, cool. There's some competition there. I don't necessarily love the Black pick, but we'll get to that. But why are like dudes that old still battling it out? Why can't we just be like, let's go get like a 27-year-old backup center who can back up Wendell? You know what I mean? Like, why not Mason Plumlee or whatever? But look, the figures don't really bum me out, man. Like, it's whatever. I do think that I really like Mo, man. I like having a bit of a prick on the team, you know, when you need it, and he is fucking good in that role. Like, he gets under dudes' skins, and you know, he's got a little bit more to him offensively than Goga. Mo has some vooch to him, man, where he can kind of like spin you off the elbow and all of a sudden take a dribble and he's at the basket. There's a lot less touch and stuff, but he's a more offensively minded big. Goga is kind of like, I'm going to score close to the basket, and rebounds and some of that stuff. So, look, however it plays out early next year, I'm not going to be too fussed either way. I don't really give a shit about how much we paid him. You can call it the France tax or whatever. That's fine. I do believe that the organization can't just fucking baby France forever and have his brother around. Like, not that I want him to go, because again, I think he is. Mo Wagner is an NBA player. Like, we're not fucking bringing in, and bless them. Like, I love their story and I love their family, but it's not Giannis's brothers hanging around, man. When like at most they're probably guys who are going to be in one of the, not even probably one of the best Euro leagues. You know, they're going to be in one of the maybe a touch lesser European leagues. But Mo Wagner's an NBA player. He's that good. But I just wonder if like, okay, when do they actually like pull the plug on this? Because like, what are we doing here? But it's like, it's here nor there for me, man. Like, you know, I think my main point is like, why are we having this like, oh, battle it out for minutes for dudes that fucking old? Like, let that be the business of like 21, 22-year-olds. Like, if you're going to go with a 24, 25, 26, 27-year-old, go get a backup center. Go get Mason Plumlee. Go get Jock Landale, who had a good fucking end of his season, man. Outplayed DeAndre Ayton in the playoffs. And also, of course, I'd get another Australian on the team. But, you know, like, there's different options there. But, yeah, I think this is one of the most confusing off seasons besides the Ingles signing, and I'm talking about that purely from a play perspective. This is a very confusing off season for me with the Magic.
I want to touch back on the Mo thing that you were talking about. I had a little bit of a controversial post, and I just want to first tell the listeners, like, I had no idea where Luke stood with Mo Wagner. We both knew we had some controversial thoughts, but we didn't talk about this. I haven't talked to Luke in days, and we decided to hold this was not
pre-planned. So if I nailed something that you're going to say, that was not pre-planned.
No, man, you're just like you're feeling some of the thoughts that I am, and I really appreciate that. And it's kind of fun that you're not on Twitter right now, because like I quote tweeted the signing of Mason Plumlee, who signed for 1 year, $5 million, and took a discount to stay, right? And I just said Mo Wagner, 2 years at 16 is the contract that we gave him, something along those lines, right? ... And it just like, it set people off in a trigger. Like, people thought I was complaining, which I kind of was. I was also doing a little bit of experiment because I was just fucking bored on a day off, and like, just kind of like, I like fucking with Twitter a little bit and like messing with people, and Magic fans are sensitive, and I just wanted to have some fun. So I did. That post got a ridiculous amount of engagement. Like, I think over 20,000 impressions within like 3 hours. It was kind of stupid though, like the level of engagement that post got, and like tons of comments and retweets and stuff. It was kind of fun. Mostly people shitting on me, but like, whatever, fuck it. I don't care. It's Twitter. But like, to the Mo thing, man, like, okay, I'm fine with Mo. I'm fine with Goga. I was really bummed that we brought them both back. One of them would have been fine. Goga is a much better defender than Mo. And to me, he's at 23. He's got a little bit more upside considering the lack of playing time he's had most of his career. Like, I think Goga can probably grow into a third or a second string backup center, but currently he's kind of like a third string center. Mo Wagner, in my opinion, is a good NBA player, But I still view him as a good third string NBA player that can jump into the second unit type of rotation on a consistent basis. Like, be that third stringer that plays 40 games a year type thing. Not the 80 something game backup center that needs to also play 20 games as a starter, because we have Wendell Carter Jr. on our team who's going to miss 20 something games a year because he does that every season. So and then when you have that, and then you look at what Mo is weak at, which I value more in a center than the offense, is defense, right? And Mo, unless he's taking a charge, he's fucking running cardio. I was reading, Malik Grady sent this to me, but people shoot 7.6% better at the rim when Mo is guarding them than their average. They shoot better when Mo is in front of them.
Have you ever looked at Ball's numbers for that?
I'm sure it's awful.
They are fucking insane, dude. Like the fact we have both of those dudes on the same team is insane.
Yeah, it's awful. Where Goga actually makes people's percentages go down from what they shoot, not go up. So it's just like, man, like we can find offense better elsewhere. Not better. We can find offense elsewhere if our backup center was a defending center and not a offensive center, right? That can't protect the paint. That can't, he's just not a good defender. He's a nice offensive player, and I will admit, last year there were some games where his offense was really awesome, and it really helped our team like get through a bad stretch in the game. He helped us win a couple of games. Like, I don't necessarily hate Mo as a player on this team. I just don't like that. I think we have two third stringers as our backup to our first stringer, to our first player who's going to miss 20 games. Oh, and we paid this guy $8 million a year. It's not a problem. That contract is not going to hurt us. We have the money to spend, and it's probably a team controlled, somehow non-guaranteed second year. When that information comes out, we can discuss it if need be. But like, he also just paid a third string center at $8 million. Like, that just is weird to me too, right? And show the Franz tax, because his brother's on the team. Like I've mentioned this on online as well. Like, Franz is a big boy. He'll be fine if his brother's not on the team. He was fine in Michigan without his brother on the team. He'll be fine here without his brother on the team. At some point, like let's transition Franz into the league and just continue to give a roster spot to his brother has to change. And it's fine for this year, but like, I don't know how much longer we cannot fill that void of actually having a proper good backup center in that rotation if Wendell Carter, who is not reliable health-wise, is going to be our starting center. You need someone who's good enough to be a fringe starter to be the backup center, and neither one of these guys are that. So that's my explanation to the listeners of the show that might have saw my online rant. Not rant, but my trigger post today. But also, that's just how I feel about Mo. He's fine. He's a good guy. I like how he gets under people's skin. If you add Goga, Mo, Joe Ingles on the floor,
you've got some motherfuckers, man. Like, you've got some motherfuckers for sure.
We will start some fights because of how much shit those guys talk, and that's going to be a lot of fun.
Goga's a bit younger than I thought, actually. Goga's actually 23. Sorry, man. 23 and Mo's 26. Yeah. Like, I feel the exact same way as you, man. Like, it's almost like my feelings is that I feel nothing almost. It's like I feel nothing. Like, that's kind of the thing. Like, so, yeah. Like, look, our rotation is something now that is weird, I guess, a bit with obviously how the draft went. But, yeah, like, we'll see how the starting, like, 5 spot looks. Like, we know how the starting 5 spot looks, but obviously it's going to be interesting to see what happens game 1.
Yeah, man. I'm going to throw I wasn't planning on showing this, but I'll show it real quick. It's our depth chart real quick, and you guys are going to get a look at how messy I do some of my show outlines sometimes, so you can check this out. But here's our depth chart real quick, all right? So at point guard, we have Markelle Fultz, Cole Anthony, Anthony Black. With the point guard spots. I took this depth chart off a Magic Daily article. I was reading it on something else. I'm like, oh, that's just a nice representation. So screen grab that. Shout out to Phil. I love you, man. Shooting guard, we got Gary Harris, Jalen Suggs, Caleb Houston, Kevon Harris. two-way asterisk next to him. Don't get too caught up, listeners or viewers of the show, with Gary Harris being the first name there. Jalen Suggs could potentially take that in training camp. Small forward, we have Franz, Joe Ingles, and Jed Howard. Power forward, we have Paulo, Jonathan Isaac, if he's healthy, Bol if he's still on the team, Chuma Okeke. And then at center, we have Wendell Carter Jr., Mo Wagner, and Goga Bitazdi. Bitadze. Thank you.
Is this us transitioning into draft and rotation now?
I think this is just our feeling going into the thing. We can talk about the draft and whatnot too. I think one thing I just want to point out, just listeners, we are at 16 rostered spots with 2 open two-ways. Bol or Chuma one of those guys are gonna get off the team. Bol would just have his option not picked up. Chuma, he's owed $16 million, so probably a trade would have to happen to get him off the team. But that's our thing. So now that I've kind of laid all that out and we've drafted Anthony Black and Jet Howard, let's just touch on the draft real quick before we wrap up this podcast. What are you thinking about just our team with how we drafted and just the overall team going into the season? Take it hard.
Man, this was one of those drafts where I actually my real life was just so fucking busy with just work and life that I went in really blind. I was just the day came around, I actually had a work thing all day, so I couldn't look at my phone. I couldn't watch it. I was just kind of literally, I had the 2023 NBA draft Wikipedia page up and I was just refreshing it while I was at this thing, right? So we pick, but in my head, I'm all right, 6 and 11, we almost have a 10-man rotation already.
Yeah.
And it's you could shore up the backup 3 spot with an adult, you know what I mean? Through trade. So part of me was I think, and I feel this was the sentiment of a lot of Magic fans, was we need to try and trade back here. And Brian Windhorst reported that we were. He said that we were on the phones. So that makes me think perhaps we didn't get something we liked. Okay. So at the end of the day, I'm one of those people where I think a lot of people when they talk about trades, and maybe younger fans will do this thing where they're why didn't we trade back? But you've got to appreciate that someone actually has to say yes. So all we can find out is that we were trying. All right, cool. If we didn't get something we were happy with, we'll never know what their baseline was for what was acceptable. So suck it up, move on. We didn't. At 11, we picked this kid who's a gun shooter, right? Okay, whatever. I didn't watch him. That's cool. His dad was an NBA player. Oftentimes, those guys, I feel most times, man, those guys can kind of stick in the league these days. They've got a level of professionalism about them. You would assume maybe perhaps it goes the other way, but I don't really necessarily think it is that often that happens. But then at 6, man, we picked this kid, and I hadn't watched shit of him. And I've started to over the last 24 hours. I finally was all right, cool. I'm sitting on the couch, got nothing to do. Let's look at this kid. There's too much crossover with Markel, man. What I'm seeing is Markel, but not good. He doesn't seem incredibly crafty. The shot is ugly. I'm not necessarily he seems to get pushed off his spots a lot. There seems to be no kind of counter moves to driving. He kind of just comes in, gets hit, throws it up. If it goes, it goes. I watched a few different videos, and I know that's not much. I appreciate that. Obviously, there's some people out there who'll be oh, dude, but he's got this, this, and this. That's okay. I still think the crossover of skill sets is kind of weird. Friend of the show, our friend Jonathan, has explained to me, he's there's minutes there for him at the 3 because of, speed and athleticism. But I think that's my general gist right now is I feel that's a little forced, and we're telling ourselves that a touch, because what I think we've got is we've almost gone and got another player with Fultz's limitations without any of Fultz's transcendent feel and IQ and weirdness that Fultz has to his game. Fultz plays like no one else in the league. So I'm just a little bit I thought we saw Jalen Suggs start to come along. I thought we saw Cole start to come along. I actually was happy to roll out Fultz, Cole, Suggs, and Harris as the 4 guards again. And I wonder, I look at Taylor Hendricks, I look at Grady Dick, straight up shooter. Taylor Hendricks, a guy who maybe could be a little bit of insurance for Jonathan Isaac in the backup 4. It felt like there was different options than muddying up that guard rotation so much. And like, I know I'm saying this from a bit of a deficit of understanding around the extent of Black's game. So I'm cognizant of that and would happy to be told otherwise, but it feels so fucking bizarre to me, man. And like, if we don't trade Cole or we don't trade Jalen, and we do I'm pretty sure Gary will be back on the team. What happens on day one? Who plays where? Like, you know what I mean? Like, does then Anthony Black become the backup 3, and then Joe Ingles become the backup 4? But then if Jonathan Isaac's healthy, what's he supposed to do? He's not going to play the backup 5 immediately after injury, which, you know, like we would want that to be an ideal situation down the track with his defensive capability. It feels like we just added someone that all of a sudden instantly forces there's got to be an odd man out somewhere that should actually be on the court. And it's bizarre to me.
I think that, like, so they weren't the picks I would have picked. I'm not a big – this year I was in a similar situation with you where, like, I watched a handful of guys' tapes. I didn't, you know, in highlights and stuff on YouTube, read a few draft profiles.
I just want to hold that thought. Just hold that thought. This isn't me saying like, oh, Cole and Suggs are 2 dudes to live and die by right now.
Sure.
Not at all. I don't – man, if we traded Cole this offseason, okay. But it just still feels like it's not the time to come. Like, yeah. Anyway, sorry, man. Keep going.
No, you're good, man. You're good. I was just saying, I agree. I was in a similar situation where, like, I didn't get super deep into this draft like I do in years past. I just too much life stuff going on, not enough bandwidth. I was never really impressed with this draft class enough to like go that deep anyways. You know, I did like a couple of guys in each range pick. I'm not even upset we didn't even draft Grady Dick like most of Magic Twitter was. Like I didn't even really care for him that much as a player. I mean, you
didn't want to see Suggs Dick next to each other on the
no,
stage?
Not really.
No?
No, it's just like, I don't know, man. Like I've seen too many of the best shooters in the draft not be good. And not translate. And I'm sure he would have translated well, but it's just like I just liked other people potentially in those positions. But like, you know, in regard to Anthony Black, like I think what the team like happened was, and Philip from Orlando Magic Daily like has talked about this a bit, is like, and I'll put it in my own words, so don't quote Phil on this, but I think the team got scarred by the start of last year with the injuries and how we just got fucked and didn't have enough playmakers to do it. And we had to like force Paulo and Franz so early to be the primaries. And we've learned like that's not what they're going to be good at right now. And they didn't want that to happen again. Right. And with Fultz being not going to say injury prone, just going to trigger people. With Fultz being someone who's had a lot of injuries recently and has like played one full season in his entire career, like having a true primary point guard is capable is like, I think something is pretty good to have on this team. I like his upside as a playmaker. I like his size defensively. He seems to be able to like versatile, but like, yeah, there's some like offensive scoring stuff where I'm just like, man, like kind of looks like Markelle Fultz in some ways where it's like, I'm going to have the same complaint about him as I do on Fultz, except maybe this kid can fix it, where I have a hard time respecting guards that can't space the floor in 2023. I'm just always going to have that now just because of the era that we play in. And, I just feel like you need that.
When was the last time there was an NBA champion that didn't have like a pull-up threat that had the other team's best point of attack defender laser focus on them? I can tell you the answer, but it's an outlier, and it would be the Bucks with Drew Holiday. Like, spacing.
But even
playoffs,
Drew can shoot some threes, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's it. But he's not like fucking Steph or someone. You know what I mean? Like,
he's not crazy, but he can. I'm pulling up his stats right now because I'm just curious. Like,
but like,
he's a
sorry, I meant to say Jamal Murray,
36%.
not Booker.
Yeah, he's a career 36% 3-point shooter. This last year he shot 38%. So he's decent, but yeah, he's not Steph. He's not Murray. He's not Booker. No, not that Booker's won a championship. He's not Kyrie. So it's just like we just have these. I'm just always gonna have like, is this player gonna be our guy if they can't do it? You know?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
After the basketball that this team played after Markel Fultz came back last season, I was ecstatic, dude. Like, I like talking to all my friends, you know, all my mates here, like that are into hoops as well, being like, yo, this season was a win. Like, this season was a fucking win. This is a step, man. Like, and everybody now, straight up, like, you listen to Bill Simmons, all them cats, they're like, like Magic are a play-in or playoff team next year. No doubt about it.
People are high on Fultz. People are high on the team.
Has the draft, did the draft deflate you a little bit around all of that?
No, not really. Because I think if this team was going to take the next step anyways, we weren't going to be relying on drafted players at that point. Okay. Right. And I kind of think the front office has that mindset as well, where it's like, cool, we're past the point where when we draft someone, they're automatically given a spot in the rotation and that they're going to have to earn it. And not every path is going to be like, cool, here you go. You have, you know, this is your path. We're going to let you play through mistakes. Like, I don't think these guys are going to get that right now. I mean, maybe a little bit. We did let.
I think Anthony Black being a 6 pick is going to play night one. Like, yeah. I just think there's a little bit of a stigma to that stuff, you know?
And that's where I think things do get a little weird is like I'm never
Jet really Howard's ass will be sitting. Jet Howard, he can sit on the bench, man. I don't give a fuck.
I've never thought like, hey, draft for fit. I've always been like draft best player available almost any time, particularly for the Magic in the last decade because we've just been that shitty. Where it's like I do think like with the pick 6, you should have some level of responsibility to get them some playing time. And that's why I'm like, well, cool. Gary Harris is probably going to get drafted to open or traded to get some minutes at some point for this kid. But like, I don't know. I'm just like, yeah, it just gets a little wonky. I think thankfully with his size, there's some possibility for him to play like a little bit like the 1, 2, or potentially even 3 in some cases. But then it's like, man, you're just throwing like non-shooting in those positions. Like, it's just going to not be the cleanest like path for him to play or like the most ideal fit, I think right now, which is how crowded it is. He'll get playing time. You know, Coach Mosley likes to play some like wider rotations, particularly at the beginning of the season. Like I think he was playing like 11, 12 men during certain games, like the first half of the year last year granted we had some injuries and stuff, but even when we got healthier, he was playing some pretty wide rotations. So like he'll find some playing time. It's going to be a little weird. I like Anthony Black. I liked him going into the draft. I don't know if I ever wanted, like, he was like 3rd or 4th for my position at the 6th though. Like, you know, he wasn't, I think my bigger issue is just like the combination. I mean, I even like Jed Howard to an extent. I like both players individually. It just like, it was just kind of like, it's just kind of like a weird fit. Like, if we drafted Anthony Black, it would have been cool to get like Derek Lively at 11, where like, cool, at least one of our picks has like a solid path to playing regularly, right?
Yeah.
Or like, you know, vice versa in some other combination. If we drafted, you know, Jet Howard at 11, it would have been cool to have like Derek or Hendricks, whatever his first name is. I'm spacing right now.
Yeah.
But Tyler Hendricks on at number 6, because again, there's a little bit more opportunity for him to play.
Yeah, that front court
area, you know,
that front court's got less logjam, and it's like, what if Derek Lively, like, you know, what if we sign Mo Wagner for $16 million over 2 years, and we get Derek Lively, and in training camp and preseason, he's able to be like, fuck, it's a real question that he can play the backup big. Yeah. And then you're then able to think about, well, how soon can I move off Mo? And then maybe it's a trade deadline thing, you know, like it just, the combination feels weird, man. It has deflated me a bit. Like I actually am a little bummed just because I'm like, well, I don't get what 10 dudes are meant to play and where on like, it feels like this is like, well, Cole's got to go. And then it's like, well, then if Jalen's shot in the second half of last season wasn't real, then look how bad the backcourt shooting is off the bench. You know, like it I don't know. It just feels like this is probably the point of where this front office where I've been the most kind of like bummed out.
It just kind of feels meh, you know, kind of feels like a meh of an off season where I'm like, I'm not super excited over a ton of stuff. Like Joe Ingles is cool. I like the versatility defensively and the playmaking of Black, but like his offense is kind of wonk, or his scoring on that aspect. You know, I like the shooting and the offense on Jet Howard, which is cool. Like that's going to be needed, but at the same point, like his defense is shitty, and I'm not sure like like, again, how these kids are going to get minutes. Like, I think this is just one of those things where it's like I'm getting conflicting feelings from this front office. It's like, are we actually going to try and be a playoff team and make the playoffs? Or are we going to try and do like another evaluation year and collect more data? And if we make the playoffs, it makes them happy, but they probably don't care if we miss, you know? Like that was what last year was. And I feel like that's the latter. I feel like we're going into if we make the playoffs, cool, but they're not going to force it. The one nice thing is like, cool, if we can go find that big fish, like trade, we can trade a couple of guards and still have good depth there, which is nice.
Hopefully,
You know, maybe this is some Markel Fultz insurance in case like his price tag is too much for us to bring him back after this season. As he goes into restricted free agency. What?
He's got 1 year left. Yeah.
Yeah. He's an expiring contract now. So there's just some like, I've never loved our front office, but like this, I've always thought they were good, not great. And this is kind of where I'm like, I feel like we're just kicking the can down the road again.
Yeah. I'm telling myself to just check back in halfway through this upcoming season and just
let's see what happens.
Let it play out, see what happens. Yeah, exactly.
I feel like we're primed for a deadline trade, like an actual meaningful one this time. Like maybe that's where we address the backup center kind of like situation. Maybe I don't know. I just like we have too many players right now to where we can like make a nice consolidation trade and do something. But obviously, like that comes with like what opportunities are there for us and whatnot. Who knows, man? Maybe this team becomes a third team in the like a Dame or Harden trade, and we mix up something a little bit. That's why I'm like, man,
if we got James Harden, dude, I'd walk into fucking traffic.
Yeah, I'm not saying I want those guys. More so, like, can we be a third team to like pick up some assets or something there? You know, I don't want Dame or Harden, not because I don't like either of those players, though I don't really care for Harden. But they're just not right for us where we're at as a team right now. This team's ready to get better. This team isn't ready to go win a championship next season.
Exactly.
So I just like. Yeah, we'll see. It's interesting, man. This roster, like, I like Chuma as a player. I hate Bull as a player. I could care less if either one of them are on our team. Like, actually, I'd prefer them both not to be on our team next year. Just like, let's figure out a way to get rid of both of them and have like 14-man, like, roster going into the season or something like that, you know? What does this mean for Caleb Houston? How the fuck is he going to get minutes?
Yeah, see, he's the one out of those three where I'm like, nah, Bol or Chuma have got to go before Caleb Houston, man. I think Caleb Houston showed a lot of good stuff last year, and I'm actually really high on him as like a good rotation shooter in the NBA. So I'm interested to see what happens, man. But yeah, Bol or Chuma, obviously, it's time to say goodbye to one of them at the very least.
I'm excited about this roster. There's just like, again, this offseason, like I've kind of given it like a C+. Just kind of like, it's passing. It's fine. We didn't get worse. We're still going to go on to the next grade. We're probably going to get better at some point, but it's just kind of like uninspiring in many ways.
Yeah.
Luke, do you still have a couple more minutes?
Yeah, man. I got a little bit of time.
Cool. I don't want to run too over. I know we've been recording for about an hour, but you wanted to talk about this, and I feel like we should. FIBA play, international play. The Magic have quite a few players that are going to be doing it. I doubt Joe Ingles is going to do it anymore at this point.
What?
You think? Is he playing this summer?
Absolutely, dude. No,
I don't know.
Don't get it. Do not get it twisted, man. Like that dude will fucking
walk
onto that court. He will wear that Boomers uniform with his legs cut off, man. Don't stress. Cool.
Well, then he is playing. Forgive me, Australia.
Yeah.
Joe Ingles for Australia. We got Mo and Franz playing for Germany, and Paulo announced that he will be playing for Team USA. Again, I will just open up the floor to you to react to the kind of controversial aspect of Paulo playing for USA instead of Italy.
Yeah, I'm excited that we have a bunch of players playing. Like it's especially Franz and Paulo. Like obviously you always like stay healthy, but learn like play under some different things, play in some different settings, have some different challenges, have some different objectives. Like the German team would be going out there, hoping to medal, and Australia medaled at the last Olympics, and we would be hoping to back that up. But yeah, the big one is Paulo, man. Like the dodging of Italy. Look, we've talked about this a little bit, man. Like he kind of came out of college and acknowledged, the Italian heritage. I think maybe on his dad's side it is.
Dad's side, yeah.
And that there was some interest for him in representing the Italian national team. But as time has gone on, it's kind of been revealed, like, he had never actually been there until he went this year for like a fashion event.
His dad hadn't either.
Where funnily enough, he was spending a lot of time hanging out with my boy Paddy Mills, because Paddy Mills is very into fashion and stuff, and he was there. But, it kind of came out that he had never been there, but he still was kind of interested. He was going to talk to the federation. And then out of nowhere, because he has the option, because you're allowed to play junior FIBA hoops, but when you first play senior, like if you've got the two different options, whoever you play for junior doesn't lock you in. It's once you play a senior game, it locks you in. So he still had the option to go with Team USA if he wanted to. And then, out of nowhere, he's playing for America. And look, I'm not one of those people who wants to sit there and like curse his decision. I understand that he is a man who sat in a room with his family and made the decision that was right for him. Obviously, people need to understand that he's looking at it from what's going to help me with my play, what's going to help me with my legacy. You know what I mean? Like a couple of gold medals on the wall, always going to help come Hall of Fame time. What's going to help me for my marketability, my brand, my profile. He knows that if he put on that Italian uniform, man, he's a fucking god over there. Like, he would have known that, man, and he would have had his family explain that to him. He would have had people on his team explain that to him. But at the end of the day, like, I get that he respects his father's heritage and, he's going to have some connection to the place, and he went and spent some time there in the off season. But if he's just like, yo, man, I grew up watching Carmelo and Kobe do this shit in Team USA, like, that's what I want to do, then that's what he wants to do, like, and like it's not that it's not cool. It's still cool. It's just less interesting. That's all it is. People who are writing him off, I'm like, fuck that. Like, whatever, man. Like, you don't get to make his mind up. It does make it less interesting. If he was like, I'll play for Italy, and we watch like Italy play Germany, man, like that's sick. You know what I mean? Like, but he's his own man. It's his own decision. I really like the Team USA team. I think compared to the last World Cup, the 2019 one, where they actually came 6th or 7th without a lot of the high profile stars. Like, I think this is kind of a bit more comparative to that team than it is the last Olympics team, but it's a really well constructed team. It's like got a lot of switchable wings, a lot of stock standard bigs, and then shooters, and then like real offensive gurus in Paolo and Anthony Edwards. So fun team. For me, it's probably one of those years, like this doesn't happen every year anymore, but it's one of those years where, look, it's like there's probably no question they win gold, but I'm really rooting for Germany to have a good run. I want France to really, get that ball and rock with it a lot. Germany and Australia are in the same group, I think, straight off the bat.
Yeah.
So we'll see Joe and France play each other quite early on. Just to backtrack a moment, man, I know perhaps maybe you were just thinking because of his age, but the Australian national team is Joe's number one priority. Like that is, he has said in interviews.
An age and injury. That's why I just said
man.
that.
He has said when he was younger, man, he said straight up, he's like, I didn't dream about the NBA. He goes, I dreamt about playing for the Boomers, that is, and he's from that generation where that was it, like those dudes looked up to Andrew Gaze, Phil Smythe, Mark Bradkey, like all the old Boomers legends. So he'll be there, man. He's already been named in the extended squad. So it's going to be cool. It's going to be cool watching Magic players play in this big tournament. I think that'll be really great too. I don't know if Bol Bol, we'd know if he was going to play for South Sudan, to be honest. I got some insight, like a few loose connections to that national program, I guess, or people who have a little bit of insider knowledge, and I haven't heard anything about Bol Bol. So, yeah, man, I'm happy for Paolo to have made the decision that's right for him. I'm going to be stoked for him, winning a medal. That Team USA team, like I said, it looks fun. It looks cool. And I'm really excited for the tournament coming up, man. I think it's going to be a good dose of hoops before the season starts.
Yeah, man. I feel fairly similar to you. Like, I think it would have been cool if he played for Italy, but at the same point, like I'm not Italian. I'm in America. I watch and root for Team USA because Belgium, where I was born and lived for, a part of my life, doesn't really have a team that's worth anything in all the play. So it's like, it's fun to see USA do well. It sucks for the Italian fans. Sure. It's always nice to see other countries have more strength and more competition levels. And Paulo would have definitely brought that to Team Italy. But at the same point, he's playing for America. It's cool. I live in America. Gives me something to root for. So
no, exactly. It'll be fun, man. Like I said, it looks like a good team. And I'm excited that France. I'm pretty sure Germany and Australia are the same group. Dude, so we'll see that match up quite quick.
We saw how much overseas play helped Franz last year. When he came to the regular season, and so hopefully that will have the same effect on Paulo as well, and Franz again for another year.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun.
Well, I'm excited for this Australia team too. It'll be Giddy's. Giddy's played warm-up games before the Olympics, but it'll be Giddy's first proper play with Australia with the full strength guys. I think he played a couple of qualifiers, maybe him and Jock Landale a few years ago when it was NBA guys were in season.
Sure.
So he has played for Australia, but this is him playing for the big dog Australia team. I'm excited for what we kind of look like with him and Paddy and Jock with a bit more NBA experience under his belt, and guys like that. So it'll be cool, man. I'm excited for Paulo, man. At the end of the day, his conversations with his family are what is most important, and it's his own decision. It would have been cool if it was Italy, but go get a medal, man. I want all the good things in the world for that dude.
It's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Cool, man. Well, Luke, I appreciate you joining me. It's been a fun hour and 6 minutes chatting with you. Our lives have both been pretty busy recently where we just haven't really talked a whole lot, a couple of text messages every other week or so, which is fun. But this is nice to reconnect and just nerd out on some basketball, man. You are no longer on Twitter, right?
Nah, man. I just had this one day where I was like, I got to get it. Fuck this.
I'm not even gonna.
I don't think humans are designed to see the opinions of so many other people in such intense fashion, and I can't fucking handle it anymore. And I fired up a burner for free agency and just had Woj and Shams, and Chris Haynes, Mark Spears, Mark Stein. So I'll get rid of that. And maybe next free agency, I'll do the same thing, man.
Perfect way to use the tool, man.
But on that note, because I don't chat to him as much, shout out CJ, shout out Pat, shout out Malik. Hope you guys are doing well. I figure they'll be listening, so I just want to say what's up.
Dude, they will be
listening. Jonathan, I talk to Jonathan all the time, man. Jonathan he can go fuck himself.
He's out of here.
Yeah, he's out of here, man. I hate that guy.
Yes, the crew. Well, I don't have to ask you to plug where people can find you because that doesn't matter anymore.
You'll find me back
out
here.
of respect for that, I won't even try. So,
you'll find me back here.
Thanks for tuning into the show. We'll have another one in a week or so. Luke, appreciate you jumping on. It's a pleasure as always. We'll talk later. Go Magic.
Sure. See you, man.